from Yellow Scene. I just wanted to welcome you all to our marketing seminar. I want to take a quick second and thank our wonderful sponsors, Nieces, KUNC, A&B Bank, Dodge Sign Company, and Postnet. And without further ado, we're going to start the presentations. First up is Siobhan Blades, the publisher of Yellow Scene magazine.
Last event, I wore better shoes, but these look cuter, so I went with these. So I'm going to start with, public speaking makes me really nervous, so you're going to sense a little bit of that, but I figured it was early enough in the morning. I was up late enough being a small business owner that you're too dazed to notice that you're nervous. So I want to thank all the speakers that are also going to be speaking. We have Ross from Red Idea. He's going to talk to us about how to get money. We have Michelle Watson from Thayer Media who's going to talk to us about how to spend it and make it back through our marketing. We have Jill from Snarfs. We have Bill from Collins from Anton Collins and Mitchell. And we have Shannon from Jax. So they're going to share all of their secrets. I wanted to thank you guys all for coming. We're going to be video recording this, and we're going to be putting the video up online. So you'll also be able to see it when that's done. My goal of doing the event was, Yellow Scene is in its 17th year. We're starting year number 17. I'm very proud of that accomplishment, obviously, but it's been through trials and tribulations and challenges that all businesses face. But we kind of had some unique challenges. We've never had an investor. We've done it bootstrapped the entire time. And so as you grow, there's a lot of things you have to learn. And some of those things that you learn come through pain. And so I wanted to talk about some of the things that we've experienced. In the last couple of years, we went through a lot of growth, massive amounts of growth. And I would like to say I did it super gracefully and everything was perfect, but really it was a challenging process. And I learned a lot. And I learned a lot to the point that, a lot of businesses, when they experience that a small business owner does really, really well, they get to a certain point and then they start to grow. They can often put themselves out of business because they don't have the resources to take it to that next level. We're very blessed that that did not happen to us because we have, and I truly believe this, we are adamant about our journalism standards. I'm a big believer content is king, and I'm going to be talking about that a little bit in the marketing. Content is king in your marketing too. But I'm a firm believer I can actually sum up everybody's advertising into one word: audience. If you don't have an audience, you're just spending money. So you have to investigate who the audience is that you're marketing to. And I think a lot of times I've seen businesses just sort of buy based on, I like the rep, or they've got fancy paper, or it's cheap, or it's a coupon. And those are not actually effective marketing tools. What's the audience and what's the communication you want to make with the audience is going to be how you're going to navigate that success. And one of the things to engage an audience is you have to be interesting. If you're not interesting, people aren't going to pay attention to you. So the goal of the seminar was to kind of share some of the trials and tribulations that we also went through and how we've survived it, and then to also, how to handle your marketing. I've been in media for 30 years. I've had Yellow Scene for 17. I absolutely love the art and science of communications. I love studying even the typography, kerning and leading and condensing. I think all of that's just so sexy and fascinating. There's a psychology to what we're doing. Marketing is not a magic tool. One of probably the biggest objection I ever hear when I'm out selling advertising is nobody said they saw my ad. And the odds of people saying they're going to see your ad are very, very slim. There's a commercial airing right now that I think is one of the best commercials that's been made in the last couple of years. It's the Dodge. It's the Ridgeline by Honda. It's the new Ridgeline truck by Honda. And they do that fast motion photography in the commercial, and it shows all these cool things that the truck can do. And at the end of the commercial, my boyfriend was like, I want one. And I was like, that's the commercial working. It made the product desirable. That's the goal, is to make people want your product. Now, is anybody going into the Honda dealerships going, I saw the ad? Most people don't even want to admit they're influenced by ads, so probably not. But guess what's happened to Honda? The sales of the Ridgeline have doubled. Now, they were in last place when they started. They're still in last place, but they doubled their sales. So, enough market share to sustain. So I have a marketing guidebook that I've made. It's, like I said, 30 years of experience, and you guys should all have one on your table, and as soon as he gets me my clicker, we'll go through it. But the very first thing it says is the first rule: design and content and distribution matter. As you're looking at your marketing, there's 3 types of marketing. As we get to the second page, does it work now? Okay. So I'll kind of run through it. I can do my marketing guidebook better. So as you get to the second page, these on the right are some of my favorite books. One of my very favorite for the small business owner is the 33 Ruthless Rules of, I can't make it go halfway. Okay, the 33 Ruthless Rules of Local Advertising. I absolutely love this book because it takes about a minute and a half to read each chapter, and he nails every single basic tenement of your marketing. It's a really great book. The other ones I really like, if you ever want to learn how to write copy, Ogilvy on advertising is a staple. It should be taught in every college. He's a brilliant master, and what he teaches us is it doesn't matter the medium, it's the content. It doesn't matter the medium. So it's all about engaging your audience. So we're going to go to the next page. You have 3 tenements to your marketing: internal marketing, direct marketing, and mass media. Internal marketing is the late stages of the purchase funnel. This is marketing to your existing clients. This includes things like your placement of your product around your store, your signage. Your location can be a part of your marketing, and it can be both external and internal. Internal marketing is what you're doing to keep your existing customers coming back. If you're losing as many customers as you're gaining, there's probably a problem. So you want it, they say it costs a lot less to keep an existing customer than to get a new one. So internal marketing is the first thing that you should have in place. Everything else, it's a building block. You're not doing one over the other. The most successful strategies employ all 3 types of marketing: internal, direct, and mass. So internal has to be in place first. You have to have good customer service, good staffing, good product placement. A lot of times people don't fail because their product's bad. A lot of times they fail because their marketing is bad, more often than not. So one of the goals of this seminar is to give small businesses that same power that big businesses can go out and employ to help make sure their marketing's not bad. Direct marketing is your next tenement. This is halfway down the purchase funnel. So when you start to look at the purchase funnel, it's AIDA. If anybody's ever watched Glengarry Glen Ross, they talk about it in there, but it's absolutely the fundamentals of communication. I like to use like a teacher trying to engage a student. If you think about Charlie Brown's teacher, he's famous for right? Nobody wants to listen to the teacher because they're not interesting. But today in schools, we have interactive communications with our kids, hands-on, so that they're actively engaged in what they're learning. So that's the communication funnel. They call it the sales funnel, but really all sales is communications. All marketing is communications. So attention, interest, decision, action. Our current election, somebody got a lot of attention and a lot of interest, and people made decisions. So, somebody else didn't get as much interest. So that's kind of an example. A politician, trying to get your vote, they go through the same funnel. As a business owner, when you're out communicating and you're advertising, you have to go through this funnel to get people to engage. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking advertising is this miracle, and really it's a communication tool. That's all it is. So if you advertise on the radio, you're basically leaving, hundreds of thousands of voicemails with people. That's all you're doing. You're leaving hundreds of thousands of voicemails. So you go through this funnel. So when you look at your internal, direct, and mass, everything applies in a different stage. Internal is in the early stages, direct in the middle, and mass in the late stages. So direct marketing is things like direct mail, coupon books. The reason coupon books go in direct marketing is because only 30% of the people use them. 10% aggressively, 10% moderately, and 10% passively. So it's a very small slice of the pie. You can actually put yourself right out of business doing too much couponing. There's actually a study that came out that shows too much grouponing and too much couponing will increase your number of negative Yelp reviews. And that's because there's 2 types of buyers: brand buyers and bargain buyers. Bargain buyers are going to come in for the deal and not come back, typically. They're not going to spend extra. So you have to be careful when and where you use a coupon. But couponing is considered direct marketing. It is not mass media. I've heard people say, well, it's a magazine. I'm like, no, it's a coupon book on glossy paper. It's not a magazine, because a magazine has content that engages somebody. A coupon book is an infomercial, really, all it is. Other things you can do for direct marketing is events. Host internal, in-house events or external events that the public is welcome to. Mass media is the big broadcast. To be considered a mass media, you have to have content. An infomercial is a direct marketing tool. It is not mass media. Now, it's displayed on a mass media outlet, but very few people, I've never heard anybody post or seen anybody post on Facebook that they watched an infomercial last night. They post about Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead. So it has to have content to engage the audience to be considered a mass media. A radio station, a television program, a magazine. Media, online media can be both internal and direct. Facebook is not as big as, it's not reaching as many people as you might think. We actually have done some studies ourselves internally with Yellowstone with our Best of the West. And I did a huge campaign on social media for getting people to vote. And I got thousands, 35,000 views. I got thousands of likes. I got hundreds and hundreds of click-throughs. And it netted very few votes. When I put the paper cards out there, when I put the magazine out there, I get more votes. So online is kind of ADD on steroids. People are buzzing around and they're clicking and they're doing this. There's this idea everybody's converting to online, and that's not true. Book sales are on the rise again. We're finding that we retain more information when we see it in print or in television than when we read it online. So online is a tool, but it is not replacing everything else. And people get that very, very confused. And I'll use an example. I have a restaurant that's quite popular. And sales are down, so she's met with somebody, and they're like, you have to get SEO. And I meet with her, and she's like, I have to get SEO. I have to get SEO. We do spend 50% of our awake hours on this, but when I go looking for a restaurant in a particular town, I use this, right? 95% of the time to look up a restaurant. What's the first thing that comes up? Maps. Well, she's already on Maps. She's already there. She's one of the top restaurants there because Maps is associating her. I'm not going in and doing the second page or the first page. I'm looking at Maps for restaurants. And so she's paying for something that she's already getting free organically. So you have to kind of look at what's my objective and how am I converting people before just deciding on the medium. The outlet is a tool to help you reach your objective. And there's no one form of communication that's the end-all be-all. If you can think of your advertising as raising a 7-year-old boy, a short attention span, I want what I want, I'm thinking about what I'm going to be thinking about. You got to get the kid's attention to get him to clean his room. And you got to get his interest. Like with my son, I made a game out of it. Here, pick up the Legos in 3 minutes flat, right? So you have to make a game out of it. So you're not going to get people who just automatically see your ad and come running in the store. It's a conversation. There's a statistic that 70% of the sales are made after the 9th call, and 70% of salespeople quit after the 3rd call. 90% of real estate agents who've gotten their license are not practicing 5 years later. 70% of small businesses are out of business in 5 years. So it's a communication. And one of the things I've seen in 30 years of selling advertising is looking for a miracle. This thing is going to be the measurable thing, and it's not. It's a communication tool. You're influencing people to trust your brand. If they think of your brand in a light that's positive, you're influencing them. That's what your marketing is going to be doing. But there's nothing that says you run an ad and you're going to be guaranteed $1 billion. If I could do that, I would be richer than Oprah and Warren combined. So I would have the answer to all of business. Mass media is the harder one, and it's trickier for people to understand. It's the early stages of the purchase funnel. So if somebody's online, and I'll use an example, my favorite story is I had to have my toilet fixed. And I didn't go out to lunch with my girlfriend and talk about my toilet. I didn't post about it on Facebook. Toilet got fixed. I didn't talk about my toilet at all except for when I do a presentation to large groups of people. But I went online and I Googled plumbers and I called 4 or 5. And Mr. Reuter ended up getting the job, and he is local. He's a local franchise. And everybody's heard of Mr. Reuter. I know I have. But I've never once talked about Mr. Reuter with my girlfriends. So he's not really getting word of mouth from me at all. And so how did I know about Mr. Reuter? Well, it was his vans driving around. It was his advertising. He had a conversation with me. So when I went online, I'd already heard of Mr. Reuter. back in the 80s when I first started selling ads, people would say, all my calls come from the phone book. Like, Joe, that's where your phone number is. You know, but the sale does not start at the phone book. It starts long before they get to the phone book. By the time they've gotten to the phone book, they're already making a decision. They're ready to take action. So you've got to get their attention, get their interest, so they will make a decision, and then hopefully they will take action. At what point they take action is the unpredictable part. You don't know. I don't need a car right now, but I fantasy shop about cars. You know, so, you know, I've had a Droid phone forever, and I've had Verizon forever, and ever, and I'm too lazy to switch, but I keep seeing the Sprint commercials, and I keep thinking about it, and maybe I'd save some money if I did, but I haven't yet, and I've been thinking about it for a while, so you don't know when they're going to take the action. How can you measure then? If it's such an intangible product, how can you measure? There are parameters, and I know Michelle will talk about this in greater detail, as well as some of the other business owners, but statistics, you monitor foot count. I average 20 customers a month. So we get to the next, I'm back at the dogs. You can measure in dogs. So this is a client that we had that does adventure hikes. Comes pick your dog up, goes out for 3 hours, get your dog dirty. He also does baths, and brings your dog back. So it's great for the person who's working and has a large dog and needs to get the dog out for an adventure hike. Through his doggy connections, you know, he'd already been working in the doggy world. He had about 10 customers, just from word of mouth and connections. As he started to advertise, the first 3 months, he didn't grow that much. Small bump. But about 6 months, he started seeing a really big bump. And about a year, he was at 18 dogs. At 2 years, he was at 24. He now is at 36 dogs, and he has 3 vans taking these dogs out. And I learned the secret. You make one dog the pack dog, the head dog, and that's how he controls all the dogs. So measure in dogs, measure in feet, zip code analysis. If you have purple teddy bears that you're selling, advertise purple teddy bears and watch the sales growth of your purple teddy bears. That's the thing about having an objective with your marketing. People want to have sales grow. Well, that's a pretty vague thing. You have to have specifics for people to respond to. So the marketing guidebook goes on and talks a lot about positioning. I'm not going to go into all of that, but it's really, there's a questionnaire in here for you. It's really designed to help you step back, take a look at the psychology of what you're trying to say and the psychology of who your audience is. And then the biggest thing I can suggest as a business owner and somebody who sells ads is pay attention to what those mediums are promising you. What is their circulation? How well written are they? Is it a boring magazine? If it's boring, it's boring. So it's probably not read just because it has woman in the title. It's probably read because it's interesting. So that's kind of my time, so I guess I have to turn it over. I could have probably talked for 3 more hours. I think, who's next on the list? Haley? Jill? All right, you come on up.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Jill Preston. As Siobhan said, I'm with Snarf Sandwiches. I'm the Director of Marketing with Snarfs and have been with the organization for about 4 years. But prior to that, I have about 18 years experience in public relations and restaurant marketing. I've worked with Noodles & Company, Panera Bread, Red Robin, to name a few. So today I'm going to be definitely talking about Snarfs, but I think some of the things I'll be sharing are lessons I've learned working with a number of different brands throughout the years. So building a beloved brand from the ground up. Well, really, the story of Snarfs really starts with the love and passion for the all-American sandwich. Our founder, Jimmy Seidel, and his nickname is Snarf, in case you guys were wondering where that name came from. He was named by a college girlfriend, and it kind of stuck with him. So Jimmy wasn't always in culinary, and he wasn't a chef. He actually started his career in the world of finance at the Chicago Board of Trade, but soon realized that this was not what he wanted to do. He's always loved food, and he has a great passion for sandwiches. And you got to remember, this was in the early 90s. So this was before a lot of the concepts that we're familiar with today were even around. And Jimmy just really felt like there was nobody out there that got that sandwich just right, just the way that he thought would be the perfect sandwich. So he started creating his bread recipe, his what this concept's going to look like, and in 1996 opened right here the first store in Boulder, and we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. And since then, we've grown to about 25 stores, and we're here in Colorado. We're also in St. Louis, Chicago, and Austin, Texas as well. And in addition, we have opened a sister concept called Snarf Burger, and I'm not sure if you guys have tried it, but it's in Boulder and Chicago as well. So I really thought that the best way to show you a little bit about Snarfs and our background, what our brand's about, and a little bit about our marketing is with the short video that we did earlier this summer. So I'm going to show that and then talk a little bit more about what you saw. So.
My name's Eliza, and I'm a Snarfer.
My name is TJ, and I'm a Snarfer.
My name's Holly, and I am a Snarfer.
Hi, my name is Jim Seidel. I'm the owner and founder of Snarf Sandwiches. Welcome to Snarf's World. I started Snarf's because I couldn't get a sandwich that I really love. And sandwiches were one of my great passions. I always was interested in opening a restaurant. Just seemed like a great opportunity to create something spectacular, something that people would really love.
So our customers, or as we like to call them, our Snarfers, come in, and it blows me away that I see the same faces coming in 2, 3, 4, and 5 times a week.
This particular store is insane. Almost every single day we have a line out the door.
A lot of people tell us it's the best sandwich they've ever had in their entire life. People from all across the country coming to visit Boulder.
We're going to be opening new stores here in Colorado and Denver and along the Front Range. And we're also growing in Texas and St. Louis and Chicago as well.
Definitely think that Jimmy has spent the last however many years he's been alive coming up with how to build these sandwiches.
Snarf sandwiches are a science and an art. I don't think I could even improve upon it. It's just that good.
We take that fresh Blue Point bread every time. We toast it because it's better. And it's better because it melts the cheese and it warms the meat up to about 100 degrees and it adds that crunch. When it comes out, then it's mayo, mustard, hot pepper, onion, lettuce, tomato, pickles, seasoning, and oil in that order because that builds the flavor profile and how when you bite through it that all those things run together.
Snarf's is kind of known for our jardinera hot pepper mix. They're sweet and spicy and super crunchy and really well balanced. People tell us all the time that it's the best part of their sandwich is the hot peppers.
The signature Snarf's peppers, those are incredible. I get them on every sandwich I get here.
Snarf's culture is really about the people that work here. We like to create teams that work well together, that like to have fun together.
I think what also helps our vibe is the fact that our staff loves our food genuinely. And I think it makes it very easy for them to have an upbeat, fun vibe, and they're confident in what we serve because it is the best sandwiches ever.
We want people to feel comfortable in our stores. We want them to feel like it's their family. And that's really what Snarf's has been all about.
We get involved with the community through activities with the college campuses, with other social groups, mostly for nonprofits around town. We like to work directly with local people who are also fans of Snarf's.
What we really want to do is give back to those communities where our Snarfers live. And we do that through giving away our gift cards, through donating food, for doing fundraisers in our stores. And it's something that will continue for the next 20 years. It's truly a part of who we are. So what's on the horizon for Snarf's? We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to introduce new people to our amazing sandwiches, and hopefully they'll become Snarfers for life.
My customers are the best. They're believers. They really believe in what we're trying to do, taking over the world.
Well, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a background about who we are, about our vibe, and a little bit about our marketing, and that's something that I'm going to talk about, and how we started from one store and is really what has gotten to us to where we are today. One thing I want to start to talk about, and I could spend the whole presentation talking about this, but is really the approach to the brand, and I think that Siobhan actually hit on a lot of these topics. First and foremost, I think it's about being a brand that people want to be a part of. And at Snarf's, we really have that. We've had these fans from the very beginning. They like the vibe, the sandwiches, they interact with our team, and they feel like they're a part of something. They're not just going in to get a sandwich. It's not a commodity, it's an experience. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been in business for 20 years and hopefully for another 20 years. It's the intangibles that build the brand. Siobhan was kind of talking about this. It's not a coupon. It's not, oh, buy one, get one coupon, I'm gonna go into Snarf's. No, it's those stories, it's that interaction, it's really getting involved with Snarf's, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The magic happens in the four walls. For those of you that are in retail or in restaurants, I mean, as a marketer, I'd love to think, oh, it's that campaign that I ran, or oh, it's this cool thing we did on Facebook. Well, at the end of the day, it's really what's going on inside the stores. And I'll talk about this in a minute in these four pillars of food, environment, and service. There's no marketing silver bullet. It's funny that you mentioned that too. There really isn't. There's a lot of different things that we consider when developing our marketing plans. And again, I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's evaluating those channels and where are you going to have the most success. And I will also argue that it necessarily isn't the coolest, newest social media campaign. It's, again, being in front of people, being in the community, and really sharing what you're all about. Leveraging all opportunities to have a genuine interaction. It's so important. We know when someone comes into our store that they've, probably seen some ads, they've heard about us, maybe they saw an event, they drove by, but when they come in, that is our one opportunity to get it right, to have that interaction with them that's gonna keep them coming back. Because if it's not a good interaction, which happens, the likelihood of trying to get them to come back is a lot harder. As we all know, there's so much competition in the market. And consistency pays off. Can't be doing something one day and then not doing it the next day. And at Snarf's, we've had some ups and downs. And I think you'll find that over time, consistency pays off, and it's not gonna happen overnight. So how do we approach marketing? We really approach it from a multi-channel marketing approach. So looking at Snarf's, what are all the different ways that we can have people connect with us? So is it through public relations, website, social media, events, e-club, advertising? It's really important to evaluate all of those channels and really figure out where is your audience. And then reaching a guest through that channel of their choosing. So perhaps you do reach someone at an event. Well, at an event, we're there talking about where's your nearest store. We're also talking about check out our website. So driving them to the different areas where we can communicate with them. But I think for today, and something I'm going to be talking about, are two of these pillars, and that's inside the four walls and in the trade area. And that gets me to this concept of the power of four. And that's 4 walls, 4 blocks, and 4 miles. So I'll talk a little bit about that because I think it really impacts any business that's out there. The 4 walls. For us, that's made up of 3 pillars. It's food, it's service, and atmosphere. And you almost can think of it as a stool with 3 feet. And if you pull one of those away, the stool's not going to balance. You're going to have issues. And I got to be honest with you, over the years, we've had our challenges. I will say this, the food has always been dialed in. Jimmy created this recipe and this sandwich that is beloved, and it has not changed over the past 20 years. Our menu has barely changed over the last 20 years. It's been very consistent. When everyone came out with, oh, you can't have carbs and no bread and, Atkins and all this different stuff, Jimmy didn't make a change. He didn't decide to come out with, the newest, the greatest thing. Trying to avoid those fads and staying really true to what we do and what's important. So the food. Service and atmosphere. Those are definitely places where we've had challenges. When I first started with Snarf's, the first thing I did is I went to all the stores and did a kind of evaluation. And I found that a lot of stores were dirty, cluttered, they didn't have appropriate signage. We were a mom and pop concept. And we had never had a director of marketing. So coming in, I had a real opportunity to take a look at all that. And the stores now and how they look now, it's a world of difference because that's important to people. Our sandwiches aren't the cheapest sandwiches out there. They're not. They're one of the most premium sandwiches out there for a reason. But you've also got to have a premium experience inside the stores. So atmosphere and service, I mean, first and foremost. Here we've been in business for 20 years, and just now we're finally rolling out a big general manager training college and program. We have trained for how to make a sandwich for years, but training on how to teach the customer, we've not done that. I think sometimes you assume, well, everyone knows how to be nice. Everyone knows how to greet someone and make them feel comfortable. And that's not the case. You really got to train that. You got to tell people what's important to you so they can represent you when you have customers walk in the door. So that's kind of the start, the foundational. From there, 4 blocks. So grassroots, what's going on in your community? What's going on that you can be a part of? And Snarfs, we've done this from the very beginning. And in the video, you probably saw that. But how we really do that is through donating our gift cards to nonprofit organizations. This year, we've donated over 100 different gift cards to different organizations. Donating our food, being at events where people can try our food. Our food is our currency. It's kind of the, we say the crack dealer strategy, where the first time's free, we want you to try it, and then hopefully you'll love it so much and become addicted and want to keep coming back. And then events around the community. And some of these pictures I just want to point out. We were in the Boulder Holiday Parade, which was a total blast. We do a promotion where we give away a snarf board, as we call it, or snowboard to our customers. We're at events. We actually had a couple who was so obsessed with snarfs that they came after they got married to snarfs, and we took a picture with them at our Pearl Street location. And then another event that we're at, the Denver Derby. So getting out into the community, talking about snarfs with people. Now, of course, they, hopefully they will see our cool Facebook page. They will see our advertising in Yellow Scene. They will see these things. But again, being in the community, I think really makes such a huge impact. And then 4 miles, regional opportunities. Once you start growing, there is an opportunity to look bigger. We have sponsorships with CU Athletics, with DU Athletics, because we know that impacts more than one store. So again, thinking about 4 walls, 4 blocks, 4 miles. The last thing I'm going to talk about, because I know I don't have a ton of time, I could talk about this forever, really is earning the right to grow. When I was with Noodles, I helped them open 175 stores. With Snarfs, we've more than doubled in size since I've started, but I think there's some key tenets to growth that you should keep in mind that certainly have helped us. If the foundational elements aren't in place, you're not ready. If you don't have your product, whether it's food or whatever it may be, purple teddy bears, the best it can be, you're not ready. If you don't have that service, that atmosphere, if you don't know what makes you interesting in your audience, you're not ready. You've got to figure those things out. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. We've been approached, different opportunities. And at the time, they seemed great, but it was like, is that really the best opportunity for us? Just because we could franchise and open 50 stores in California, is that really what we want for our brand? Is that really going to make sense? The right real estate decisions are critical. We have locations that we've opened that we've had to close, a couple of them over the years. Same great sandwich, same service, same atmosphere, but the real estate decision, it just was a poor one. And you can't get over that. You can try your best to point people to that location, but really making sure that you have that right location, even if it costs a little bit more a square foot, I think is so vitally important. The brand may not translate in other markets. We have opened in St. Louis and Chicago and Austin, and those lessons are interesting. What translates in Colorado, we have this hippie vibe and people know us. In Chicago, they don't care so much about that. They're more conservative. They want to come in, they want to come out, they want to get their food. So we've had to change some things a little bit about our brand to fit into that community and that audience. Again, knowing your audience. Always plan for the next level. When we were at 5 stores, we were planning for 10. Right now, we are at 25 stores, and we're planning for 50. So what does that look like? From an accounting standpoint, an ops standpoint, systems. I mean, these are all things that have to evolve. And if your team isn't evolving with you, and we have managers who aren't ready for that, who don't want that, well, then maybe they're not the right people to take you to that next level. And you have to be able to make those decisions, which are sometimes tough. This is last, but I think is probably the most important, is that your culture is just as important as the numbers. Snarfs, we have this really cool, unique culture that has built over the past 20 years. And of course, everyone gets excited about these numbers and growth, but you shouldn't grow your business faster than your culture, because that is truly what makes you who you are and makes you special. And like I said, we've had opportunities to grow faster, but we have it on purpose because we want to make sure that what Jimmy created, this fun, bohemian, interesting brand, that it's going to be that way in the next 20 years. I think that's it. So I hope all of you guys, if you've never been to Snarfs, you'll check it out. You won't be disappointed. And I hope you have a snarfy day. Oh, and just so you know, people always wonder who these characters are that are in our logo and how they came about. And Jimmy hired this young graphic designer out of college. He created this, and it kind of stuck. So this is Sam, Chip, and Bev, so sandwich, chips, beverage, and they are original Snarfers, if you didn't know. So we try to embrace them. They're a part of our history, and we like to bring them to life. So anyways, that's it. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Jill. Up next is Bill Jones, the managing partner of Anton Collins and Mitchell, which is a certified public accounting firm with 4 offices in serving clients nationwide.
Okay, so I'm an accountant at a marketing seminar. But I think it'll all tie in, you'll see that. So a little bit of interesting trivia. I started college in technical theater, lights and sound. I was a licensed pyrotechnic. Then I changed to business and started in marketing. And I decided that I didn't want to be in sales, so I changed to accounting. Now I'm a partner in a CPA firm, and I spend half my time doing sales. So you never know how you're going to get where you end up. So our firm is a full-service firm. We do a lot of work with clients of all sizes, from the individual that comes in on one day and says, I have a box full of receipts, I started a business last week, to some rather large companies. So most of what I'm talking about today is just based on experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can use your financial data. As small business owners, most of you probably think accounting is a necessary evil. You do your books before you have to do your tax return. And once you're done, you don't really look at it going forward. And the problem with financial data is that it's historical. By the time you get it, it's already happened. But I'm going to tell you how you can use that to project going forward, which will help as you grow. So we always start with questions: where are you today? Where do you want to go? And why aren't you there? And everyone knows the common answer to that is, I don't know. Most of you have an idea of where you want to go. You just don't know the steps it's going to take to get there. From a financial perspective, we'll talk about that. So consider your whole life you've been riding a bus. One day you're standing at the bus station and someone pulls up with a really nice car, says, I'll trade you my car for your bus ticket. It's trading your job to be a business owner. The driver gets out, says he'll trade you, say, great, deal done. So you get in the car and you start driving. You start to think about where you're headed, and you realize that your whole life someone else has been telling you where to go. When you're an employee, they tell you where to show up, what the direction of the company is. But you have no idea now that you're in the car how to get to your destination. What's even more troubling is that you don't have a GPS. Let's say this car, there isn't even a dashboard. So you've traded the bus, your job, for a car, your business, but now you need to figure out how you're going to get to where you want to go. And I'm just talking about financials today. So planning for your business is critical to success. And I love this diagram, the business cycle. If you look and you really do it right, it's continuously changing. It's circular. A lot of businesses get to this point just limp along, and hopefully you don't shrink back. But you have to keep redefining your business as the environment changes. If you've been in business for 30 years, the factors that lead to success have changed significantly. So ask yourself things like, where do you want to be in 1 year or 5 years? That's the easy part. You look at your strengths and weaknesses for your business, but then you need to look at what do you need to get there. Today you're talking about marketing, that's going to help you grow, but what things do you need in place to manage that growth? And that's usually the downfall of businesses when they have really quick growth and they haven't planned for their needs. They end up struggling to catch up. So I'm talking about financials, but really you're asking the question, do you have enough gas? Do you have enough funds or runway to get to where you're trying to get to? Are you going too fast or maybe too slow? Are you too aggressive, too conservative? And is your business operating well? Is it profitable? Are you getting quality of life? All those things factor into this. And then are you going to get there in time? What's your horizon? So if your goal is to build a business and sell in 5 years, that's one path. If you want the business to operate forever and maybe your family takes over, that's another path. But the timeline is different for each one of those. So where to begin? I think we're going to have a discussion today about getting investors. What are your capital requirements? What are your sources of revenue? Are there other products you could offer? What are your costs? And that's usually a struggle for businesses when they first start. They have passion for what they're doing, but they don't know how to charge for it appropriately to cover their costs. And then what are your operating expenses? What's your overhead? So to start this process, you need to have a vision of where you want to go. It doesn't have to be completely dialed in, but you need to have an idea of the direction you want the company to go and what the end goal is. Historical financial statements are useful to help with pricing and managing your growth. You can look at industry standards. If you're in an industry that has a lot of others in the same industry, you can compare yourself with financial data, which is freely available at the library and other online sources. And then you need to have realistic expectations. If you start your business today and you say, I want to have $1 million of sales by the end of the year, maybe that's not realistic. So everyone should operate on a budget. The only thing we know about budgets is they're good for a split second in time, and it's never going to work out exactly like that. But if you've done the thought, if you put the thought into the budget, you can see when you start to go off track and make adjustments accordingly. And that budget should really be multi-year. Obviously, the further out you go, the more general it gets, but it just helps keep you on track. Then when we get to the end, I'm going to leave you a handout with the ratios, but you can do ratio analysis to see if you're trending the right way, depending on what you're trying to focus on in your business. And then you should always do a detailed monthly review of your financials. So real quick, business owners all understand profit and loss. That's the way most of us run our lives, right? Income in, expenses out. If you have money left at the end, it's profit. But there's really 3 financial statements that you should focus on as a business owner. The balance sheet really tells you where you are. It's a snapshot in time, but it is the financial position of your company. Do you have positive equity or negative equity? The income statement shows you what happened over a period of time. It's a moving picture, so you can look at it by month or by year or by quarter. It really tells you what the impact to your financial statement was over that period. And then the cash flow simply tells you how you got from the net income number to the cash that's in the bank. And I usually get the question is, if I had profit, why don't I have any cash in the bank? So what is the most important financial statement? It kind of depends on what the question is that day. And each business owner will have different needs at different times, whether it's throughout the year or simply in planning the future growth of your company. But using ratios, you can take your historic financial data and put it into these different ratios, and you don't have to read it to understand the concept. There's a handout in your materials that are on your chair that talks about some common ratios. And when you look at these ratios and the trends that they're creating in your business, it will help you identify pitfalls as you go forward. So a liquidity ratio, for example, the current ratio, it's the first one on that handout, compares a couple numbers on your balance sheet. But all that really tells you is that if you have more current assets than current liabilities, that means you're going to be able to meet your obligations in the short term. In a lot of organizations that are feeling the cash flow crunch, if you look at that and focus on that as a way to improve the business operations and watch that trend go, it'll become more and more realistic from a cash flow perspective. Other ratios that you look at as business owners, if you have inventory, you can look at how often your inventory is turning over historically. So you know when you're buying inventory, how long you're tying up that cash. And then if you have customers that pay you on credit, so receivables, you can also look at the turn on accounts receivable historically. So if you look at your balance sheet today and there's 100,000 in accounts receivable, and you know your average turn on accounts receivable is 35 days, in 35 days you should collect $100,000. It helps you make business decisions based on historical data and trends so that you're making choices that are going to improve your business as opposed to just kind of limping along. On this handout, this is just a summary of some of the ones that I like to use. There is an explanation of what each one does, but there's thousands of ratios you can look at. And it's going to be different for each one of your businesses depending on your industry. Little changes can have big results. So if you're operating your company, in this example, we have 800,000 of sales. You have variable costs, which are costs that adjust based on how much you sell. With gross profit of 400,000, fixed costs that you pay no matter what, like your rent and those sort of things. We get down to net income of $100,000. Now let's say you're operating the company going forward, so you're not concerned about the last piece, but if you're trying to sell your business and just hypothetically the sales price is typically 3 times net income, in this scenario, sales price would be $300,000. By the way, everyone thinks their business is worth $1 million or more. They're not all worth $1 million or more. If you look at the historical data and say, what happens if I increase sales by 10%? In this scenario, it takes the sales up to 880,000. The variable costs change because you sold more, but fixed costs stay the same and the net income went up $40,000. But you can also look and say, what happens if we reduce fixed costs? So you reduce your standard overhead. Again, we go through the calculations, we end up with a little bit bigger profit. But what happens if you just increase the price of your product 5%? So the first column is what, say, is happening now. If you make some minor adjustments, you can more than double your net income if you make educated decisions based on your historical data. And if you were selling your company with a few minor changes, you change the sales price from $300,000 to $642,000. And that's a significant difference. And this is a real life story. I have a client that met with me. They'd been in business for 25 years, never thought they would sell. They thought someone would take it over. Their son wasn't interested in continuing in the business. When they met with me, they had had the business valued at $4 million. We spent 2 years changing the way they accounted for things, different presentation, not even changing the numbers, just the way we presented it to be more consistent with industry standards, so that when buyers would come in, the multiplier would look better. After 3 years, they paid a little bit more tax because business owners all know that you make your business look as bad as possible because you don't want to pay any tax. They paid a little bit more tax. So in 3 years, that first valuation of $4 million, they sold the company for $24 million. We didn't really change anything about their business. We changed the way they accounted for things. We changed the way they looked at their business so they carried less inventory, provided more cash. So if you don't think that your financial statements have an impact on your business, you need to look a little closer. Some things to do on a regular basis. You should really look at your financial statements. The balance sheet shows your financial position. Look at that each month. Get an understanding of what you're going to need going forward. Short-term cash needs. Compare that to your budget and make adjustments as you go. You should always reconcile your financial statements to make sure everything's included in them. So reconcile to the bank, make sure you didn't forget to enter a check, those sort of things. Anything that you can get verification from the third party, just make sure that your financials are a little bit more accurate. Always review the accounts receivable aging if you have customers that owe you money, and the accounts payable aging, so that's what you owe your customers. That will help you predict when the cash is going to come in and when you're obligated to make payments. So if the aging on your receivables starts going from customers owe you for 30 days and it starts to creep into 60 and 90 days, you need to focus on your collection efforts so you can continue to operate the business. And then whatever ratios that you look at that are important to your business, look at those on a regular basis. Are they trending the right way? Are things getting better or worse? And then review pro forma statements. So project out every once in a while. This is a great time at the beginning of the year to kind of look at where things ended up last year. You have to do that anyway to get your taxes done. But then project that out. Say, if we continue this trend, where are we going to be? So I'll end with the first consulting job that I've ever worked on was they were in retail, they were manufacturing handbags. They came in and they said, listen, we've been in business for a long time. We just can't get past this level. They had a lot of good advertising, marketing, sales were climbing, but we looked at where they were going to be in a projection, and we said, you're going to run out of money in August. And your biggest sales months are December, retail, around the holidays. All we had to do was get them a short-term line of credit to make it from August to January, and it allowed them to have what they claimed was their best year ever. But if they hadn't been projecting that out, potentially they would have been shut down in August without cash available to build out or to produce their product so they could have their best year ever. So this is kind of, financial literacy to me is one of my passions. We're happy to offer an hour consultation at no cost if you guys want to come in and get a start. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next speaker is Ross Schell, CEO and founder of Red Idea Partners.
Good morning. Happy to be here. Thanks to the other speakers and thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks to Siobhan, who I've known for, I think, almost 25 years. So she and I go way back. And I'm excited to be able to talk a little bit about capital raising and seeking investors. So my firm is nearly 10 years old. It's called Red Idea Partners. We're based in Boulder. We do three things. We do innovation and growth consulting for mostly entrepreneurs. Worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs over the past 10 years. And we're now getting hired by some corporate innovators, which is interesting. Second thing we do is we seed invest. So we are early stage investors in interesting companies, mostly in the food and beverage realm. Bhakti was one of our first investments 6 years ago. We're now stakeholders in 14 different companies, and most of them are in food and beverage, but we started to move into other areas that we like. And the third thing that we've done, or that we do, is we now and again very carefully and with no naivete launch ideas on our own because we are in a world of opportunity and we kind of keep a greatest hits list, and now and again we actually launch something. We launched a food manufacturing company called Natural Food Works a few years ago that's now 80 people across Louisville and Denver. I hope you'll see a new product that we launched called TalkBox. That's a cell phone booth for offices, and hopefully there'll be one in public spaces as well. Simple idea, lots of demand, and that company is growing really nicely, called TalkBox. So I spend a lot of my time in the world of capital and raising capital and ideas, and are they worthy enough to raise capital, and what's the right time to raise capital, or should you raise capital? So before I get into some topics, and I do not have visuals, I have my notes today, so I kept it pretty simple, but let me ask a few questions. In the room, who is an entrepreneur? Great, lots of entrepreneurs. Who is a business owner? Okay, if you're a business owner, do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Raise your hand if yes. Okay. Who in the room is not an entrepreneur right now, but is thinking about being one or might like to start your own business someday? Great. And who in the room has written a check to invest in a company before or been an angel investor? Okay, no problem. So for those of you who either are entrepreneurs or business owners already, or those of you who are aspiring to do that, the first thing I would say about raising capital is being clear about why. So if you are a business or you have an idea that you think is scalable or highly scalable, and you believe that the business plan requires a significant amount of capital, and when I say significant, $1 million or more, not $100,000, then you start to have the thought process of, where are you trying to go? And if this is something that's really scalable, then you might be on your way to starting to attract outside capital. I'd also say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with running a business step by step by step, bootstrapping it, even if it's a big idea, by the way, getting it to proof of concept. If you have an idea and you can get it into market without raising much capital or bootstrapping it, and it's working, and it's producing revenue, and it's a good to great idea, the value of that business and what you can raise money at in terms of valuation is probably significantly different than if you have a deck that looks great and it's a neat idea, but you have no revenue and you're really relying on investors trusting the idea and you to execute on it. So you're going to give up a lot more of your business probably in equity if you raise money without any proof of concept. And you might also save yourself a lot of headaches, because being realistic about whether the idea is a good idea, the market will often tell you that. So if you really have a good idea, sometimes it's wise to make sure that you can get it into market, know for yourself that it's a really good idea, and then be able to gauge whether you want to spend your next 5 or 10 years doing it. So another thing I'd say about clarity and being clear about why to raise money. Entrepreneurs that I see that end up being long-term success stories, they are long-term success stories. Most people I know are working on their business for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And at that point, they might have a 5 or 10 or 15 or $50 million business. But a lot of times you think somebody accomplished what they did in 2 years, and you're surprised to learn that there were 7 hard-fought years before anyone really sort of knew about their business. So one piece of clarity is get clear with yourself if you're an aspiring entrepreneur about, are you ready to put 5 or 10 years into this? If the signs tell you and your hard work tells you that you're onto something, interesting and good. But going into the expectation that things happen in 2 or 3 years often is a complete setup for not having kind of the endurance mentality that's required to make something successful. And that's a great way to disappoint yourself or be disappointed or end up disappointing investors. So, go into it with a clear head that, this might be 10 years of your life, and that's not an unhappy thing. If that feels unhappy, don't do it. If you see that as an interesting and fun journey, then maybe you have the makings of wanting to raise money. So second point I would make that follows clarity is understanding basic metrics and educating yourself. So how many, Bill just talked a lot about financial literacy. How many people, raise your hand if financial literacy is a topic that you gravitate toward, enjoy, like, find it easy? Good job, Bill. That's okay. And how many of you find that topic intimidating and mysterious? Okay. Anybody in the room brave enough to tell me, why do you find it intimidating and mysterious? Yes. Understood. Anybody else? Okay. Yep. And you'll always calculate incorrectly when you're doing forecasts. You'll get better and better at forecasts, but you're never going to be perfect on forecasts. So lack of experience. I get it. How many of us, raise your hand if you learned to ride a bike? Raise your hand if it was kind of scary. Okay. It takes a bit of a leap of faith too, right? Because if it's not something you feel like you're good at, then you have to sort of jump on the bike. So my point here is you cannot escape math and numbers and finance being a really important part of business. You can hire a great director of finance or controller or CFO, and you probably can't afford some of those folks at the beginning anyway. But my business career spanned being an entrepreneur, running a brand agency that I owned part of for 10 years. It's now 25 years old. I then went to an innovation firm called IDEO, that's world renowned. And then I totally shifted gears and worked in the hedge fund and private equity world for 5 or 6 years, which underpinned my ability and growth and learning to be able to get into seed investing. But I would say that the first 6 to 12 months that I worked at the hedge fund and private equity firm was very mysterious, really hard learning curve. But what I would say is that and part of what I did is really demystified finance for me. So one of the things I would say is that if you're already a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, and particularly if you're planning to raise capital, do not make the mistake of becoming self-educated in understanding finance and money and valuation. If you are raising money and you don't know the difference between gross margin and net margin, don't feel bad, but ask questions until you understand it. If you don't understand what EBITDA is, it's not that hard to explain. I could whiteboard it and we could talk about it and we could back into why that fits into valuation. EBITDA is earning before interest, taxation, depreciation, amortization. Again, if we had a whiteboard, we could talk about that. But my point is, and some of the things I said just sound mysterious, but I can assure you that they're not. And I can assure you that if you dedicate yourself to asking questions that may feel like, I feel embarrassed, I don't know this, you don't need to feel embarrassed about asking questions to learn. So my team members, I hope, find it interesting that oftentimes when we're talking to an accountant or we're talking to an attorney, I'll often keep that person on the phone for another 10 or 15 minutes just asking questions to clarify anything I didn't understand. And on one hand, that might be a little bit more expensive. Sometimes they may not even charge you for it because they may, figure you're asking academic focused questions. But every time you have an opportunity to advance your financial literacy, do it. And the world will become a lot less mysterious around so many things. You'll read the Wall Street Journal now and again at a hotel visit or on an airplane, and it'll make more sense. So the other thing about, I said basic metrics and knowledge, it's also really important that you arm yourself with understanding some of the basic facts around business. So we had an entrepreneur come in and pitch us on an idea, and the pro forma showed that they'd be a $50 million business within 5 years, and that in year 5 they would have 95% gross margins, and that would be maintained throughout the life cycle of the 5 years. Not net margins, by the way. They weren't going to keep 95 cents on every dollar, but the cost of goods sold was only going to cost them a nickel on every dollar. Granted, it was a software business, but no one in the world for the most part, unless it's an illegal business, has 95% gross margins. So that entrepreneur had a hard time understanding and believing that we gave the feedback. They sort of thought we were trying to talk them out of a great idea. We weren't. What we were trying to do is to say, if you go in front of other investors and you pitch this, people will, behind the scenes, probably leave thinking that that business plan has absolutely no semblance of logic or reality in it. Anybody know what the average net income percentage is for a business of any size in the US? It could be dry cleaners, it could be Apple Incorporated. And net income means if there's $1 in revenue or sales, net income is the amount of profit after you pay for every single thing before taxes. What's the average percent? So how many cents on the dollar are left average? What's that? Good guess. Anybody else? 20 is very high. Anybody else? 7 to 8. Okay, so if you're Cisco, the food distribution business, you make about 3 to 4 pennies on a dollar in profit, and you're a $40 or $50 billion business. If you're Walmart, you make 2, 3, 4 cents because you're in high volume and your margins are very, very, very thin. If you're Coke, at least in better years for Coke, because Coke now has other challenges with sugar water and diabetes, et cetera. But, and by the way, Coke owns almost 700 other brands to offset that, many that are not as unhealthy for you. Coke in its glory days might make 15 or 20% net income because its primary ingredient was water, and water's cheap. But my point is, go into your business journey understanding, what are the basic parameters. If you think that your business is going to make 28% net income over and over and over again in your projection, you're so far above what the average is that that's probably not going to happen, or you're going to invite enough competition will come in and compete with you because they realize that you're making such good money. So know the basic facts. Next tip I'd give you is use experts. So take Bill up on his offer for a 1-hour session with him. You will never go wrong using great attorneys, using great accountants, and people who understand these topics. Arm yourself with those things at the beginning of your business journey, not in the middle, not at the end, and see those resources as really important investments. So do things right, use experts. Business plan. First of all, you got to have a good idea. It really should be a great idea, but it's got to be a good idea. And if you're hearing people around you over and over again say, got to be honest, I'm not sure about that one, and 19 out of 20 people tell you that, and they're being that honest, then you need to listen to that. It's okay to have an idea that's already out there. It's okay to have an idea where there's already competition. Jimmy started Snarfs. The sandwich wasn't new. Jimmy just made a really awesome sandwich. So it's okay to be in markets where you have competition. On the flip side, if you think your idea is really novel, use the internet. It's probably not. And what I mean by that is also don't overestimate how unique your idea is and go in with a false sense of we're going to be the first mover in this market. Talkbox. First thing we did was do market research. There's a company in Finland that's probably a $20 million business doing this. We think there are other companies in the U.S. that are doing it. We don't have any naivete about the fact that we're going to be the only player in the modern phone booth market. So assume you're going to have competition. And furthermore, maybe you're the only one on planet Earth doing it, but if it's a good idea, then other people will do it. So competition isn't a bad thing, but don't assume that you're going to have your own your own category that you get to rule the roost on for a long time. Risks and tips around that. Partner very carefully in your business. Bad partnering is the root of horrible disasters, lawsuits, ruined lives, torturous years, failed marriages because you had to complain about your partnering for so long. Partner really carefully. Or don't partner. Get clear about what kind of person you are. If you don't want to partner and you want to be the majority owner of your business, then be the majority owner of your business. I'm the majority owner of my firm. And that's for a good reason. I want to be in control of my own firm and my own destiny. And there's no reason to apologize for that if that's what your vision is. But don't walk into a business idea that you're incredibly passionate about thinking that somehow you owe it to other people to partner and decide that you have 25% ownership across 4 people and then regret that later. Partner carefully, partner slowly, test partnerships, work with people before you partner. Don't make promises around partnership, before you've gotten clear about that, and use lawyers when you put partnerships together. Be very careful about loans and debt. SBAs require personal guarantees, and personal loans often will require guarantees. So be very realistic. If you run a business that does $1 million in sales, and it does 7 or 8% net income after paying you, hopefully, right? That's $70,000. So if you take out a $350,000 loan and you use every nickel of your profit for 5 years, it's going to take you 5 years to pay it back, and that doesn't include interest. So be realistic about leverage and be realistic about loans. I could talk for a couple hours about capital raising in terms of specifics and tactics and strategy. From accredited investors and what that means and why your lawyer is likely to tell you to raise capital from high net worth individuals and structure the raise that way because it reduces liability to you if things don't go well. I could talk about common shares versus preferred shares. I could talk about advisory boards and board of directors and how to grant people some equity in that. All of those things are things that are much longer discussion points, but I would say understand the rules of the game, understand how capital raising works, hire Bill, hire Red Idea Consulting, ask your lawyer and accountant lots of different questions, but make sure that you walk into those sorts of opportunities eyes wide open. My last nudge would be, so is it the journey or is it the destination? And I think it's both. So, and what I mean by that is, particularly if you're raising money, you may get money from friends and family, and they may just say, hey, even if I lose it all, no big deal. By the way, don't ever raise money from anyone that can't afford to lose the capital. Ever. If you think somebody's really relying on a return for that capital and it's a new business, walk away from the money respectfully and say, you know what, I think this would put too much pressure on you. And that might even be an accredited investor. If somebody's worth $2 million net worth, they're an accredited investor, which is $1 million or more, excluding your house. But they don't have probably any business giving you $1 million of their $2 million net worth for your business. That's too much concentrated risk. So use your own common sense, even when it might be tempting to accept money. You need to be really careful about not setting yourself up for disappointment or disappointing somebody else. You need to be rational about that. But the journey and the destination piece, I would say that if you raise outside capital or take on investors, you need to understand that you're introducing a destination piece. They are probably investing, unless they're friends and family and it's more of a grant or a gift. But if they are investing with an expectation return, there does need to be a destination. Either this business needs to grow big enough that it starts to split a share of the profits, which may take 5 or 10 years to get that large, or they want you to sell it someday, or they want to get bought out. So there's going to be a destination that's fair of them to expect, and you should talk about what that looks like. You should talk about that in realistic terms. The journey part. If you, on the flip side, even if it's your own business and it's 100% you, if you go into a new venture thinking that, in 3 or 4 years, I'm going to, have built this, sold it, all hunky-dory, and it really took you 12 years and you're miserable for 12 years because you never knew it was going to take that long, you missed the point about the journey. You should start your own business as an entrepreneur if you think it's a good idea, it's well thought out, and you can enjoy it through good and bad years, through challenging times, through your worst days, through your best days. And if you kind of get a kick over time about being gritty, and if you begin to introduce outside capital in it, do it carefully, but make sure that you also are owning with yourself that investors have a right to expect updates, communication, a return, their money back and more. They may not get it, so you need to be very clear with them and documents and conversations around that. But go into that with a happy mindset around the journey, but understand that destination starts to become part of the expectation as well. I hope those comments were helpful. Thanks to Siobhan and the Yellow Scene staff for putting this on. Hopefully my comments were helpful, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to share some of my thinking on capital raising. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ross. Up next, we have Shannon White, Brand Manager of Jack's Mercantile.
Hopefully I'm going to remember everything I need to do. Can you all hear me? It sounds different up here. Oh, like this? Okay. Yes, I'm extremely nervous. No, I don't do this, ever. I can't believe I'm doing this. And yeah, so I feel like y'all have done an amazing job. And so I hope I can at least say something that's worth your while. I feel like I'm amongst a bunch of professional speakers. So I am Shannon. I have been working at Jack's for over 20 years, almost a full 21. When I started there, I brought with me also an additional close to 20 years. I've been in marketing almost 40 years, as sad as I hate to say that. I used to own an ad agency also up in Idaho. My sister and I did that together, and you're right, be careful about who you partner with. She was wonderful, thank goodness, but it could also be a stressful situation. In that agency, I just want y'all to know, I was thinking about this and I had to laugh. I had my first Apple. It was the first Apple, the screen was that big, and somewhere along the way, I learned that it's now worth about $250,000. So be careful what you sell with your business. Anyway, so a little bit about Jack's. Part of this talk was really supposed to be Jim was maybe going to be here, but he was unable to make it, and so I'm here. Jack started in Ames, Iowa. We still have that store. They grew up in Denver, and the folks used to take him back to Iowa almost every weekend on the train. And when he got old enough to go to college, parents said, "You're going to go to Iowa State University," because that's where Ames, Iowa is. And he used to sleep on a cot in the basement. He'd trot off to college, go to school during the day, or whenever his hours were, when he wasn't in class, he'd open up doors and do business. Before that, they had people, running the store, one or two. Seriously, the store wasn't probably too much bigger. Maybe two of these stages, that's what it was. And so Jim would sleep on the cot, go to school, do all this. When he became a junior in college, he said, "Mom, Dad, I want to come back to Colorado. That's where my roots are. I want to go up to Fort Collins." And he opened up Rocky Mountain Surplus. And did that for a few years. Down the street, a company named Jack's went up for sale. It was Jack's Surplus. So it was actually Rocky Mountain Surplus, Jack's Surplus. Those people their sons didn't want to continue on the business. They wanted to retire. And so Jim went and knocked on the door and said, "I'd like this location." It was much larger even than the little spot that he had. And so they worked an agreement, and he said, "Oh, by the way, why don't I just keep your name?" So that's where Jack's came from. We were told probably JAX came from those people that owned that. The Dreyer family used to go down to Florida a lot and like the Jack's beer in Jacksonville, Florida. So that's what we believe to be true. And from there, it started to grow. I remember shopping in Jack's at the location on North College in Fort Collins, boxes and boxes of military surplus. Eventually, it grew to become, all of a sudden he started bringing in more clothing, more this, more that. Some of our companies, Patagonia, Marmot, they didn't want to be associated with this. Royal Robbins, because of the look over here versus the look where he was going. Jim has always maintained a vision. He's amazing. I love the man, can you tell? He has always maintained a vision. Eventually, he started turning things over in the store, and we are still a huge surplus store, don't get me wrong. We go to a huge show in Las Vegas, Nevada. We ship things to Korea. I mean, it goes everywhere. Still a big part of our business, but definitely not in the storefront as we used to be. So Part of what Jax's success, I believe, is Jim has always invested in great people, and many of you have already touched on that, but he has always invested in great people, people who know more about that product than maybe he does after a while. He used to go to all the shows. He used to do all his own hiring, and when you get to the point where we are now at 7 stores, you can't always do that. He has great people working for him. He also has a great product. I hope that some of you have been in our stores. Everything I have on today is from Jax. I have to laugh about that. And that's how I really started to work there. When I first moved back to Colorado, I am a native, but when I first came back, that was the only store I shopped in because they had Snickerdoodle coffee. And I was like, this is the only store that you can buy $15 mustard and a rifle. What a concept. It was crazy. Anyway, I remember and then we used to own a hot air balloon business. Actually, my ex-husband does still, but we were going to have a little balloon rally at our house, and so I went to him and said, I wanted to do a trade with him, but I also told him, I said, I had just moved back here, sold my ad agency in Idaho, and I said, if I was still in the business, I could market this store so easily. I love this store. Be passionate about what you're doing, okay? If you're not passionate about it, it's not going to go out that way. Okay, so anyways, 2 weeks later went by, because he asked me, he says, well, would you do that? And I said, I don't know. I'm kind of out of the business. I'm burned out. As I told you, I came in with 20 years at that point. Anyway, he kept after me, and I said, okay. And it was the best decision of my life. I love the store, still today as much as I did back then. The downside to what I'm doing now is that we're way out in LaPorte, and we've grown so much that we have home offices, and I'm not in the store, but whenever I need a fix, I go in the store and I get rejuvenated with ideas, all of that. It's amazing. So anyways, Jim has always been consistent, okay? So part of what I'm gonna say to you, maybe in a little bit, and I might jump back and forth, but be consistent with what you do. Don't be all things to all people. Know your niche, stick with it. Okay? When I went there, coming from an ad agency, I did radio, TV, print, billboards, I did it all. I love broadcast. He did 2x2 print. But we did 2x2 print well. And we did 2x2 prints. TOMAs, top of the mind awarenesses. For years, it worked. Don't fix what ain't broke. Okay? We were small. We were one store. And so it worked well. We were local. Everybody knew Jax. Guess what? Now we're in Broomfield and Lafayette. Nobody knows who we are. Okay? One of the first things that I did get worked into my budget, which I was really excited about, couldn't afford TV at the time, although I dreamt about it. I even talked to the TV stations in Denver. Couldn't afford it though, but we did do billboards. So when we came down here, voila, I find there's no billboards. I tried buses. Not enough people knew who we were. So what works, and I think that you talked about that, what works in one place doesn't necessarily always work in another place, okay? So part of my message is really knowing who your customer is, how are you going to reach them, okay? I can't even begin to tell you how many people come in to sell me advertising. Is it really important that you know who really cares about you and who really doesn't? I always like to think so. I always tell them, don't schmooze me. I have been doing this long enough, I can read through you in a heartbeat. But still, I really like a lot of my reps, but I can't buy them all. I just don't have the budget. And this is something that I'm really hitting hard on now, because guess what? We've gone from one store in a market that people seriously knew us for 50 years. It's just been probably in the past 5, maybe 7 years that people don't call us Jax Surplus. We were known as Jax Surplus by a lot of the oldies, but the market is renewing, new people are coming in, we're growing, oh my gosh, we're so big up there. But the point is that I gotta now figure out, because it is changing, the markets are changing, I gotta figure out what now is best for Jax. We have now become regional. We allow our stores to have their own little budgets so that they can do what they want, maybe on like you talked about, 4 blocks, Jim has a huge donation fund, I feel like. He donates back to the community way beyond you could ever imagine. And that's good. You do have to give back to the people who support you. But you have to also really be aware of the changing market all the time. Be consistent, okay? Know who your market is, and don't buy too deep. Meaning, okay, I want to do print, I want to do radio, I want to do TV, I want to do all this stuff. Man, it's just too hard. I don't know if y'all have ever looked at some ratings. Have your radio person bring you in a rating from Arbitrons. Look at the list of radio stations. There's a gazoodle of them, okay? And while even number one might be up here and they're pulling 25% of the market, where's the other 75? Be aware of that. Hold your reps accountable to CPMs, cost per thousands, okay? Figure out what every ad is costing you. And while you don't always, like these, a lot of everybody's talked about too, people are just gonna rush right in and buy you. But that's why if you're consistent, it will start to work. I promise you, even if it's just one little thing. Be consistent with it, but make sure that it's the right medium too, that you're reaching the right target, okay? And then comes frequency. Frequency is very important. It is really important, okay? Reach and frequency. Cost per thousand. Make your reps or whatever it is that they're selling affordable for you, okay? Keep that in mind. All right, I get off on things, sorry. Probably one of your most important mediums are your own customers. I do believe in customer service for Jax. Our customers are our business. Without them, you're nothing. So we do try to take care of them. And with that comes just advertising. I want to touch a little bit, and this is really funny, I want to touch a little bit on what really makes an ad work. And I was going to mention David Ogilvy. David Ogilvy is the man. David Ogilvy on Advertising is a great book. I go back with him back to college, and that was a long time ago. But what he has in his book on a lot of levels still holds true. Your headline is your most important. Your headline is your most important thing that you can put in an ad, okay? Two things I want to say about that is have a benefit. Try to not, and even I skew off of this and I find myself because I'm doing 500 ads a week, but have a benefit. With your product, you will bring those customers in if you have a solution to their problem, okay? That's what people are looking for. Benefit, benefit, benefit. Why come to you? Because you're going to be able to help me. We've got the gear for you, okay? Important. The other thing, don't, never, won't, can't. Do not put anything negative in your headline, because you've got 1 to 2 seconds when somebody's flipping through a magazine, when somebody's flipping through a newspaper ad, when somebody's zipping down a highway looking at your billboard. I don't really care when somebody's hearing you on the radio. Your headline does also carry to TV and radio, by the by, okay? Don't, Jax, what'd they just say? Always spin positive. I guarantee that. I promise you that, okay? Don't just rely on branding. People are being hammered all the time. Branding, I'm the brand manager, you bet it's important. Be consistent with what you put out there, but on top of that, always have a call to action. Just saying right now, always have a call to action, okay? Choose your message carefully and own it. Offer truths only. Keep it simple, keep it clean. People get lost in decision making, don't confuse them. Don't be afraid to repeat winners. I can tell you right now, that came from David Ogilvy. You have a winner, repeat it. You're seeing it all the time. You know what? And Siobhan, the little ad that you have in your newspaper with the little, I think it's probably reconstruction surgery or whatever. Oh my God, look at, last time I saw that ad, I bet was 5 years ago. But every once in a while when I look in there, it's still there. It's gotta be a great ad for them. Repeat winners. Okay, every item that Jax puts out, we do check the sale on that particular item. We look at it 2 weeks before, how it performed, and then during the price control period for us is 10 days. Don't rerun it if it doesn't work. Maybe not so much, because people do buy up, and I can't remember who it was that talked about that. Look at the people coming in your door. Are your customers increasing? Okay? Jax has customer counters at the door now, because that used to be my argument, 18, 20 years ago. Well, geez, how do you know that they didn't come in looking at my JanSport ad, JanSport backpack in the newspaper, but guess what? They came in and they bought up and bought a North Face. Jim, I'm sorry, but I want to, in sales, always look at your sales. Advertising's working if your sales are up, right? But look at the customer count at your doors, okay? All right, I gotta hurry. They're giving me my time. How do you advertise? Like I said, look at your cost per thousands, okay? Who's going to give you that more than anything? And marketing is an elephant. Eat them one bite at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by it, okay? This has gone around with me forever. I can read what it says down below. It says the basic argument for advertising in a recession. I should have crossed that out. It's seriously at the bottom. It says 1991 Dow Jones and Company, right? So I've had this a long time. It says when times turn bad, they're made worse by hesitation, halfway measures, and panicky decisions, such as the decision to reduce or eliminate advertising. The fact is, companies that maintain or increase their advertising spending during recessions get ahead. And that means always, like I told you, Jim has always been consistent. That's the last thing that you should look at. Cutting. A less crowded field allows messages to be seen more clearly, and that increased visibility results in higher sales both during and after a recession. And that also brings me to one other thing. Whatever kind of business you are, there are certain times during the week, if you're not looking at doing, something like a magazine, which is a monthly pub or a weekly pub, but something, like if you're a weekend business, then you're going to want to advertise Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe Saturday, okay? If you're a service business, maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that when you're not quite in the clutter of everything too. So there's a lot of science to it as well. But always keep your advertising. I'm gonna close with one more little thing that supports advertising. A man wakes up in the morning after sleeping on an advertised blanket in advertised pajamas. He bathed in an advertised bathtub, was with advertised soap, drinks advertised coffee after his advertised juice, cereal, and toast, puts on advertised clothing and rides to work in an advertised car. He'll sit at an advertised desk, write with an advertised pen, yet this man hesitates to advertise, saying that advertising doesn't pay. Finally, his unadvertised business goes under and he will advertise it for sale. Hate to end on a negative note, it's not quite, but it's just the point. It is embrace it. Be smart about it. Okay? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Our final speaker is Michelle Watson, Media Supervisor at Thayer Media.
Hello. I am actually going to be expanding a bit on some of the points that Shannon just made. And so, Shannon, thank you for that wonderful introduction into media planning and buying. I am going to talk a little bit about media and some various considerations that you can keep in mind as you are making decisions to support your business through advertising. One of the first things that I want to touch on are the strengths and the benefits of all of the different media that are out there, because by understanding the strengths that each of the media types offer, you can really leverage the best opportunities for your business. So I'm going to start with television. Television, the strengths here are really that it is audio and visual. And because it has both of those elements, it does tend to lend itself to having the best recall of all of the media types. It's also one of the best ways to reach your audience because, believe it or not, people are still spending the most time each day with television as a medium. It averages 4 to 5 hours a day, which is really tough to believe, but actually as you get into the demographic segmentation, you look at older demographics, that number actually goes up as high as 8 hours a day. So it's a fantastic way to get in front of people. It provides very high reach opportunity in the market. With a 1-week schedule, you can actually get as high as 90% reach. And it is one of the most cost-efficient vehicles that are out there because, like Shannon said, if you're considering different advertising types and you're looking at the cost per thousand as compared to the audience that you are actually reaching, yes, it is high out of pocket, but you are reaching so many people that it winds up balancing to a very small CPM. Radio also gives you high reach, which is handy if you are needing to get out to a broad market. It is fantastic for reaching people who are on the go, and that's especially true during the summer months. And one of the strengths that radio can really offer to you is the fact that they are very strong with promotional offerings. So if you are trying to generate buzz around your brand and really get people talking about it, you can always work with them to create a custom promotion that will not only get your name out into the market, but it can also potentially get you names that you can use down the road in further communication, e-blast, things of that nature. Out of home is actually one of my favorite media types because it can be used in so many different ways and so many different capacities. It can lend itself to broad market awareness where you're on all the major arteries within the market. It can lend itself to very geo-targeted campaigns. So if you have to work within a particular service area or a footprint, you can usually make that work a little better without spending the amount of money that you would on radio or television where you've got a lot of wasted coverage. The other thing that is really outstanding about out of home is that you can execute in particularly surprising ways. So whether that is a 3-dimensional execution on a billboard or a pop off the top, or if it's something more non-traditional, like advertising on elevator doors or gas station toppers or bar coasters, places where people aren't expecting to see you, and so you can generate a little bit more interest around the message that you're putting out there. Consumer print are things like Yellow Scene, like 5280, like Denver Life. And the benefit here is that the people who are reading these publications are making the choice to sit down and spend their time with those publications. So you have the opportunity here to really expand on your message. It's not something maybe that would fit on a billboard where you've got a second and a half to have people see what your message is. You can go beyond that in a magazine ad and really get detailed with the type of messaging that you're putting in front of your audience. Newspaper lets you align with the section. It is a high-reach, one-day type placement, so maybe you're in a situation where you need to get the word out quickly and you are in a bit of a time crunch, but you need to get to a wide audience. So newspaper may be a great solution for taking care of that because you can get that high one-day reach. If you are wanting to go for local flair in your in the message that you have to share, maybe it goes in Denver in the West. If you're a restaurant, maybe it goes in entertainment. So there are ways that you can align with the different sections in order to reach the appropriate people for your message. One other thing that newspaper really has going for it that a lot of the others don't is the fact that it does still offer couponing opportunities. And while they've talked about the fact that you really do want to probably limit those opportunities in your business, if you do have an offer or a flyer or an insert that you want to put in Denver, Wednesdays is still the food day, and a lot of people will subscribe to still get the Wednesday paper because of that. And so you can leverage that type of opportunity to get your message in when the household decision maker is looking for that type of a placement. Display online is particularly interesting for a lot of reasons. I've heard a lot of people refer to this still as a non-traditional media placement, and I always find that interesting because I think at this point in the game, it's a very standard inclusion to a media plan. There are a couple of big benefits to this. There are a lot of different ways, number one, to interact with your audience through display online. You've got your standard banner advertising, which maybe doesn't get as high of a click-through rate, but you also have to keep in mind that those are functioning as billboards for you as well to stay top of mind. But then you get into other things like video, where you have the opportunity to, there again, expand on your messaging and engage with your consumer in a different way. If you have a grand opening, you might want to consider some of the really high impact placements, sliding billboards, things of that nature. And those are interesting because while they may not be long-term, they really give you the punch that you're after for the couple of days that maybe you need that kind of presence. Creative can be very easily tested this way, A/B testing to determine what's going to work best for you. And one of the reasons that media buyers like me love display online so much is because it is very easily trackable. There's a fantastic tool out there through Google. It's the Google URL Builder. So you can actually create your own trackable URL and track the information in Google Analytics to determine, well, okay, maybe there was a great front-end click-through rate, but once those people made it all the way through to the website, did they actually do what you wanted them to do? Did they take the action that you were looking for? Are you looking to increase your e-newsletter subscriptions? Are you looking to increase time on site? So you can look at all of those pieces of information, and it really helps you make a more balanced decision about what's working and what's not. Last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about pay-per-click advertising. And this is handy for a lot of reasons. It doesn't have to be terribly expensive. You can usually do a 1-month trial for maybe $500 to see how it's going to work for you. The best part about pay-per-click is that you are reaching consumers who have pre-qualified themselves for whatever it is that you're offering. If you have a furniture store and you are offering dining room tables and somebody is searching for dining room tables and you've bid on those keywords, you're going to be served. And you're reaching people who are a little bit further down the funnel because of the fact that they are ready to look for dining room tables that you can offer them. It's usually a pretty quick execution, so if you're looking to get into market quickly, it can be a great initial implementation to get to the low-hanging fruit. All right, so this chart, a little tough to read because it is wiggling, but this really shows you an overview of all the media types and how it compares targeted to broad reach and high relative cost to low relative cost. So you can see down in the lower left corner, we've got pay-per-click reflected. It is very, very targeted to people who are searching for your particular terms, and you really don't have to spend a lot of money to get there. Whereas on the upper right corner, you've got the exact opposite with television. Yes, it has that fantastic broad reach, but it's also going to be a high out-of-pocket expense to make it work well for you. So if you are looking for something that is broad reach and can still get you that, that large audience, but you don't necessarily have the budget for television, maybe you consider out-of-home, which is going to be a lower out-of-cost but can achieve some of the same objectives. And then last but not least, I just wanted to go through some of the questions that we are always asking ourselves on behalf of our clients as we're beginning to go through the decisions about what types of media make the most sense and what placements we should be considering and what types of strategies are going to benefit the client the best. So you start with audience. What types of media is your audience most likely to be consuming? If you have a younger target, you're probably going to want to have mobile ads included in the mix. If you have an older target, I wouldn't exclude display online, but maybe you blend newspaper into the mix so that you are actually reaching your audience where they are. Is there a lifestyle element that you can take advantage of? Maybe you offer outdoor adventure type items. So maybe it's something a little more out of the box, like aligning with a bee cycle and doing a sponsorship in that way, so that you're talking to people who are doing things that they are interested in and seeing your message at the same time. Do you need broad-based media? Do you need something that's more targeted? It all depends on your service area and your footprint. We work with various community colleges who really can't go outside of their own little narrow footprint, but they still need to generate wide awareness. So that type of question can really drive the types of media that make the most sense for you. And then one of the big points, and this is something else that Shannon mentioned, is you should always ask the vendors who are approaching you to give you information on who it is that they cater to. What is their demographic strength? And I guarantee that every vendor out there, they have that information to share with you. With radio buy, ask for a ranker that shows a 6-book average so that you can figure out where exactly those folks fall in the overall scheme of things and decide whether or not they are going to be a fit for your message. Getting into messaging, this can drive your media types as well. How long is the message that you need to convey? Is it very detailed with dates and locations, in which case you're probably not going to want to put it on a billboard where people have a second and a half to read the message. So you have to think about those types of nuances in order to be in the right place. What type of action do you want a consumer to take? Going back to the e-newsletter, do you want them to sign up online? Do you want to increase your website visits? Do you want somebody to take an action like calling? Each one of those choices can generate a different media solution to get to the best response. Are there date specifics that you need to keep in mind? And by this, I mean less about is there a start and an end date, and more about is there a time of year that maybe you're focusing your advertising on. If you're looking at summer, probably TV is not the right choice. You're probably going to want to consider more of a radio type placement because of the fact that television viewership falls off in the summertime. Going into production, this is a question of, do you already have assets or do you still need to design them? Do you need to get into market quickly, or can you afford the 3-week lead time that you need for out of home? So those types of decisions can also influence the direction you go. Budget is something that every business has to worry about, and being able to advertise within your means. And so that means asking some questions like, do you need to be in market for all 12 months, or can you condense your flight into a period that makes the most sense so that it potentially gives you the opportunity to layer your media? Oftentimes, I understand that with smaller budgets, you do have to sometimes pick and choose and only have a couple of things that are going on. But overall, with our recommendations, we typically do recommend layered media because of the fact that you're reaching people at various points during their media day. So it helps to build that frequency that then can lead to action. If you are able to put together a plan upfront in your year that carries you all the way through, you're probably going to have better success with that than accepting proposals across the course of the year and just accepting various ads as they come to your attention. And that really ties to a couple of these suggestions that I have down below that we've run into a surprising amount actually with some of our clients when they come to us. You know, if you are able to put together your plan in the beginning rather than stretching that out, you're less likely to spread yourself too thin. Effective testing is another very important piece of this. And what I mean by that is if you are testing a new medium, make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. Don't do it just once and then decide whether or not that was successful. You typically need to actually plan out what that test is going to look like. Maybe it's a quarter of display online with various creative tests so that you can truly tell if the medium worked for you or whether or not maybe there was creative that just needed to be tweaked. So there are always those considerations. And then last but not least, and I have found that this is very difficult for a lot of people, don't be afraid to say no. If the opportunity is not a fit for your objectives and what you want to achieve, it is not worth moving forward with, because I guarantee that there's going to be another opportunity where you're going to get a better return on investment for those dollars. And that's what I've got. Thank you so much. So.
How do you account for that in your CPM, in your plans? I mean, how as a media planner do you know if people are even seeing your message?
So there are a couple of ways to answer that question. The first one is that DVR still accounts for a very small percentage of viewers. So while it is a consideration, it's not such a significant number that it actually affects the overall cost per thousand. It's still in the range of maybe 5 to 7% at this point who have DVRs. So it's a pretty tiny percent of the audience. I would say additionally, the other benefit to the DVR part is that when we look at numbers, we're usually looking at a 1 day plus 7, because you also have the potential benefit of picking up viewers who weren't there in the moment, who don't fast forward. So it's a little bit of give and take, but in the end it balances out. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody.
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like, wow, I know some really smart people. Like, these were great speakers. And as I was listening to everybody, I wanted to kind of get up and close with, you know, I think I've made every mistake that they've talked about. But as I've had to analyze those things that cause me hiccups, I can't forget to also look at the successes I've had. Sometimes we're in a difficult spot. It's really easy to get despairing. And I think one of the things that really helped me pull through as we went through our growth challenges, and we went through growth challenges, was it actually forced me to look at what my strengths were as well, not just my weaknesses. One of the things I know about Yellow Scene that is really powerful is we have a following. We have an audience. We have great writers. We have a great production team. And I've never lost my audience. I might have made mistakes, I might have done this, but we didn't compromise what was the most important thing that I deliver. Instead of purple teddy bears, I deliver an audience. So, you know, it's not fun when it's challenging or as fun, but I will tell you, I know that with my model, I'm not going to probably be the person that's going to be a bazillionaire. I want to be successful. I don't want to be poor, because that sucks. But I have also, you know, when I was kind of during the darkest period, when we were going through a lot of growth, and then the floods happened, and there was a lot of challenges kind of happening for me all at once. And this was after 13 years of starting out of my apartment and growing 15% every year for 13 years. Like, I had this amazing track record, and then all of a sudden I hit all these challenges. You know, at the end of the day, I remember one day just sitting there going, why am I doing this? And because you like what you do. And I love what I do. And so, you know, if the whole world were to fall apart tomorrow, I got to spend 15, 16 years of my life liking what I do. So for me, that end result is as rewarding. I'm not looking to scale out. I know for me, the exit strategy, like people always ask me, when's your exit strategy? You know, I do have ideas in mind, but for me, with what I do and the goals in my life, that will present itself when I'm ready. I don't think I'm ready yet. So that's one thing. So don't be too hard on yourself for the mistakes. Somebody told me once, if you can survive your mistakes, you'll probably be all right. And on that note, you know, I have seen people, there's kind of a couple of things that happen when you do hit these challenges, and there's challenges every day in business. I saw a chart once that said people think business is like this, but really it's like, you know, and that's the truth. You know, I have this spirit that does not give up, and people that know me sometimes like it and sometimes don't, but, you know, I've never given up. I don't give up. I get up and I go the next day, and, you know, you keep trying, but don't give up. If it's too stressful, like Ross said, if it's too stressful and it's not making you happy, then that's the point. But, you know, just because it's hard doesn't mean we have to give up. And I think a lot of people give up when it's hard. So that's kind of my closing. I really appreciated all of our speakers. We had phenomenal people here. The video is going to be available online, so you guys can go download it. You can also download the marketing guidebook. In the back of the marketing guidebook, and some of the other speakers touched on this, I talk about the different types of ads, institutional versus call to action versus branding. They're all kind of three really important, but don't think a call to action is a coupon. You're only targeting coupon people. A call to action is, I want that Ridgeline pickup truck. That's a call to action. Make the person want it. That's actually the bigger call to action than selling it out. So on that note, thank you guys all for coming. I hope it was great. Somebody reminded me, we do still have our Best of the West up. We are getting votes, but there's only 3 more days. So if you haven't voted, it's an open poll. There is no pay to play on our ballots. There's no drop-down menus. It's a blank ballot, so anybody can win. So if you haven't voted, get out there and vote. All right, thank you guys. Have a great day.